So all you want to do is help these people.
People are worried about getting sick, and they're worried about bringing it home to their families.
We split our volunteers into two groups, and then we wait to see whether anyone develops a coronavirus infection.
After March 13th, learning looked really different.
Some days are better than others. We're really not taking over as teachers.
I could see the writing on the wall.
With everything that happens, there's always opportunity.
The doors are closed, but really we're still open.
COVID hits, it's a whole new ball game almost every single week.
Hello, I'm Dawna Friesen. As we exist in this limbo, balancing the need to keep physically distant with a yearning to get back to normal, we are united in one thing: gratitude for those on the front lines. It's the closest we can come to giving our healthcare heroes a standing ovation. The clapping, the pot banging, the singing. It started spontaneously and spread all over the world. Why do we do it? Because while we stay home, they go to work, putting themselves at risk of getting COVID-19. By staying home, we're helping them. The spread of the virus has slowed. In Canada, the curve is flattening, and our hospitals have not been overwhelmed with patients. But they are saving lives every day. Jeff Semple takes us inside one hospital and meets a doctor whose family constantly confronts life and death questions.
Each time the ambulance arrives, staff at Toronto's Humber River Hospital hold their breath, concerned not only for their patients, but for themselves.
People are worried about getting sick, and they're worried about bringing it home to their families.
Worried because over the past 6 weeks, they've seen firsthand what COVID-19 can do.
Never really faced anything like this before.
ICU is a very high-risk environment, but this is taking it to the highest level.
We have to just assume that every piece of equipment, every piece of furniture, and every other person has COVID, and that's what our mindset has to be day in and day out.
The ambulance arrives with another suspected case, a young man struggling to breathe.
With COVID symptoms like 66 and...
This hospital is now treating around 60 COVID-19 patients. When they first arrive, winding through a maze of machines and masks,
Hi.
They're greeted with a calm voice and kind eyes.
My name is Dr. Tori. What's the biggest problem for you? Is it your breathing?
Dr. Susan Torrey is a hospitalist. Her job is to care for those who are sick but stable, which describes most of their patients with COVID-19.
We are seeing a fair number of cases that come in. So if an average day shift, we have maybe 14 to 16 referrals from an emergency doctor. I'd say at least, half of those are suspected COVID.
This patient tested positive and was self-isolating at home before he started having trouble breathing. He was found passed out on his apartment floor.
Sounds like the patient is a pretty stoic guy and was trying to avoid coming into hospital as much as possible, but his family then really urged him to come and get some help. Who lives with you at your home?
But now that he's here, his family can't see him. In this pandemic, they're not allowed to visit.
But it's difficult. There's patients going through a lot of very severe illnesses, and in those moments where there's high stress, every family member just wants to be there holding their hand, and they can't. Yeah, which one?
So instead, Dr. Torrey takes his hand and keeps a close eye on his condition. She's seen how quickly COVID-19 can take a turn for the worse.
Hey guys, we need a crash cart! Crash cart!
Just down the hall, a 62-year-old woman with COVID-19 who arrived just hours ago can barely breathe.
This is quite consistent. It's actually quite scary.
Dr. Jamie Spiegelman says it's fast become a familiar pattern. Patients suffering flu-like symptoms for up to 10 days before their lungs suddenly fill with fluid.
So it's really a very smart virus because the virus gives itself 9 days to be able to be contagious to other people before a person gets really, really sick.
And to save the really sick, doctors perform a high-risk procedure. The team is preparing to intubate, to insert a ventilator tube into the patient's airway.
Normally, before the COVID era, if someone had to be intubated, we'd all, we'd put on a mask, but we'd really all kind of rush into the room. Now, we have to do things a lot differently. Face shield.
For their own safety, they've redrawn the playbook, deploying extra layers of protective gear and fewer staff inside the room. Others stand watch outside in case anything goes wrong. And this time, something did. The ventilator tube wouldn't fit properly. Her oxygen levels plummeted. And for about 10 seconds, her heart stopped. More staff and equipment were rushed inside. The doctors performed chest compressions, and in the end, they saved her life.
All you want to do is help these people, and our patients, but just watching them desaturate so quickly and not be able to do everything that we can all the time to help them it is really frustrating, and it's terrible.
The patient remains in critical condition, but hospital staff have given her a fighting chance. Dr. Tori is done for the day, but the weight of the pandemic follows her home to her other job.
I told you.
A mum to 6-year-old Piper and 3-year-old Reese.
Okay, girls, what are we playing?
When the pandemic started, the family debated whether she should live somewhere else for a while, afraid she might bring the virus home.
It's constantly on my mind, just in terms of being as careful as I can.
And she also worries about bringing home her work.
You have to just find a way to try and let go of it when you come home. It's not always possible.
It helps, she says, to talk about it with friends and family, including her dad. To them, he's Grandpa.
Huh? Who's that?
Oh, who is that? I think that looks like Reese.
To the rest of us, he's John Tory, the mayor of Canada's largest city.
How's Grandpa doing? You must be missing these guys.
Well, I tell you this much. I can't wait for the day when I come and visit my grandchildren. I drop by and I do this thing where I stand on the porch like 10 feet away from them and talk to them, but I can't give them a hug. So I'm waiting for the day, which I will have a hand with others in hoping to make come as soon as possible, when we can give people a hug.
He misses his granddaughters and worries about his daughter.
I mostly think about her because she's in an environment where she's exposed to people with this virus all the time, and I worry about that.
Mayor Tory says his daughter wanted to become a doctor since she was 12, after her mother was hospitalized with a serious illness.
I am proud of what Susan does, and I'm proud of who she is. And the who she is part is much more important. She's a compassionate, caring, loving individual who is applying those attributes of her personality to looking after people as a doctor.
I mean, you both sort of find yourselves on the front lines of this in different ways. Do you talk about work with each other?
No. And the fact my daughter's on the front lines as a doctor is just helpful to me in the context that I can turn to her and ask her a few questions about all this kind of thing. But how are things at the hospital? What's going on there, from what you hear?
Like sort of.
And see and experience.
Yeah. Similar to last week, it's weirdly quiet. It's a weird feeling, but it's like paradoxically not busy, but also busy just because of what's going on.
Dr. Tory is seeing firsthand the results of her father's lockdown, a surprising number of empty hospital beds, far fewer COVID-19 patients than they'd feared. They're also seeing a sharp drop in the number of other non-COVID patients. Traffic to their emergency ward is down 40%.
Some of it might be people aren't driving as much anymore, so maybe we can explain that. But other people might have worrisome symptoms and they're just sitting on it because they don't want to go to the hospital. Because the hospital is a place where all the COVID patients are, and so they're avoiding it. And so that's going to catch up to us.
And perhaps it already has.
Hi there. Oh.
This elderly patient just arrived in hospital.
How have you been feeling?
Rotten.
Rotten. Okay.
She's been feeling rotten for a couple of weeks, but was reluctant to come. Her test results revealed she doesn't have COVID-19, but she tested positive for acute leukemia.
We're going to make sure she's very comfortable, okay?
With the visitor restrictions, Dr. Tori had to break the news to her family by phone. And the next day, she died.
That case weighed on me because this was a woman who was of an advanced stage. She was 90, but she was living independently and suddenly has this illness. You spend a lot of time trying to help, the patient and help the families kind of emotionally navigate the situation. And then I have to kind of move on to another patient after that. There's myself and every other frontline provider who's come home and cried. But we're human at the end, we're emotional, and it's okay. I'm lucky I have the support of my family.
Now here's a question. When you're in seeing a patient who is, oh, hey, Piper, hi, can you wave to Grandpa? Piper, do you want to go back to school soon? Do you love going to school to see your friends?
It's hard.
Families around the world have been forced apart by this virus, and a brave few are fighting, risking their own health, to help ensure the rest of us can be safely reunited soon.
Okay, see you later, alligator. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, John. Have a great day. Be safe.
Bye.
The whole world is waiting, held hostage by a virus so new to humans, we have no immunity to it. We don't even fully understand it. What could free us is a vaccine. Never before have hundreds of scientists all over the world been focused on the same thing at the same time, creating a vaccine for COVID-19. At every hour of every day, scientists in at least 21 countries, from the UK to Russia to China and Australia and to Germany, the United States, and here in Canada, are toiling away. At least 115 different teams of researchers. And though vaccine development cannot be rushed, speed is of the essence. This is an international race, and Canada is in the running. There is only one way to be certain a vaccine works: test it on humans. Eliza Granado, a microbiologist, is the first to be injected with a trial vaccine for COVID-19 in Oxford, England.
I'm a scientist, so of course I want to try and support science, the scientific process, whenever I can. And since I don't study viruses, I felt a bit useless these days, so I felt like this is a very easy way for me to support the cause. Yeah, and that's why I'm here, and I'm excited.
Scientists at the Jenner Institute in Oxford are leading the pack in what's become an accelerated race for a safe and effective way to inoculate the world and allow us out of our bubbles. They hope to have 6,000 people in this human clinical trial by the end of May.
Well, I think everybody agrees it's the only way we're going to get out of the lockdown, the social distancing, and really be able to still have people protected as they go about their daily life.
Vaccines usually take years, not months, to produce. This is happening at warp speed.
There's a different urgency here in a pandemic setting. And so we're doing our phase 1, the first in human study with this vaccine, which will take place over the next week or so, and we'll immediately roll into the next phase of the study rather than waiting for a prolonged period of time for all of the results over many months to come out.
All vaccines expose the body to an antigen that won't cause disease but will provoke an immune response. For many vaccine hunters, the key is the spike protein. It acts as kind of a Trojan horse for the virus, bonding to human tissue and then unleashing live virus molecules. It, in theory, attaches harmless material that looks like the virus to the spike protein, essentially fooling the body and hopefully stimulating an immune response, one that blocks or kills the virus. As soon as China released the genetic sequence of the virus in January, work on vaccines began. At least 7 teams have reached the first phase of human clinical trials, some using weakened or inactivated parts of the virus, some using new, entirely synthetic methods. Nothing is guaranteed.
The pressure is on, definitely, from my parents, where they ask me, "So Nadine, did you do it today? Do you have a vaccine for us?" keep trying.
Human clinical trials are now underway in the UK, the US, Germany, and China. So many potential vaccines, it's possible there could eventually be more than one that works.
I think we're very optimistic in our vaccine's ability to be safe and potentially effective.
This man lost a close friend to COVID-19, and he volunteered for one of 2 human trials underway in the US.
You hear everybody say this is the new normal. I don't want this to be the new normal. I want this to be an inconvenience, and then we can get back to normal.
In Canada, this lab at the University of Saskatchewan is on the fast track. The Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization International Vaccine Centre, or VIDO Intervac, was the first in Canada to isolate the novel coronavirus, and it just got $23 million in federal funding to accelerate work on a vaccine.
We operate one of the largest high containment facilities in the world, and that allows us to work with viruses like the COVID-19 virus.
Dr. Gertz and his team are working on what's called a subunit vaccine. Only a very small part of the virus is introduced into the body, lowering the chance of an adverse reaction.
We were also the first lab in Canada to have an animal model, ferrets in this case, up and running. We now also have developed a second animal model, hamsters. And we're one of the few organizations in the world right now that actually have a vaccine already in animal testing.
Testing in humans at this lab, it's hoped will start in the fall and then be expanded. If everything goes right, VIDO could get emergency authorization for a made-in-Canada vaccine as early as late spring or early summer of 2021.
That is much faster than it normally is. It can take 7 to 10 years for a normal vaccine to be developed for humans. So the 12 to 18 months that everybody is talking about is really already a very, very fast, accelerated way of doing it.
Researchers at least 5 other Canadian universities, including Laval, are working around the clock, too.
Well, there is not that many labs in Canada, actually, that have the expertise to develop vaccines, and I have this expertise.
Dr. Denis Leclerc and his team are taking a different approach. Even before this pandemic, they worked with using dead molecules from a plant virus. It's harmless to humans, but still triggers a strong immune response.
They look like something dangerous, but they are not at all because they cannot replicate. And that's the idea. It's like a lure when you go fishing. You know, you want to attract the big fish with this. That's what we are doing with it.
There's lots of collaboration and lots of promise, but it's only when solid data from human clinical trials emerges that we'll know if anyone has created the magic bullet. It can happen. Polio was once one of the most feared infectious diseases in the world. Yearly outbreaks infecting millions, killing and crippling thousands of children. Then, in 1955, Jonas Salk announced he'd come up with a vaccine, and cases of polio are now reduced by 99%. The scramble now is to replicate that with a vaccine for COVID-19. The lab that seems closest right now is the one in Oxford, England. If human trials here are a success, they say they could be ready to administer millions of doses as soon as this September.
Personally, I'm very optimistic it's going to work.
Optimism and lots of hard work as the world waits for science to get our lives back to normal. With me now is Dr. Stephen Jones, a Canadian virologist who was a key figure in the creation of a vaccine for the Ebola virus developed by Canada's National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg. He is now in Saskatoon. Dr. Jones, thanks for joining us. That optimism from the Jenner Institute is encouraging, but correct me if I'm wrong about this. Human clinical trials, I think, fail far more often than they succeed. And the record for creating a completely new vaccine is about 4 years. So is 12 to 18 months for a COVID-19 vaccine possible?
That is actually a really good question, and I was surprised to hear that they feel that they would have a candidate ready for use in September. That would be a remarkable achievement, and you're completely right. Even the target of 18 to 24 months is extremely ambitious. We're essentially 2 months through that time frame, so at best 16 months away, and again that's really ambitious. 4 years is a very reasonable time frame for development of a new vaccine. Vaccines have been extremely safe and effective public health interventions because we go to extraordinary lengths to make sure they're safe and efficacious before they're put into use. We are essentially giving something to someone who is at the moment entirely well, and the last thing we can afford is for that vaccine to have a reaction or to make disease worse than it would otherwise be.
Which is why we do human clinical trials. We've made vaccines, of course, for other deadly diseases, including Ebola, which is what you were involved with. But are some viral diseases easier to make a vaccine for than others?
Yes, they are. Ebola was difficult to work with primarily because it is so dangerous to the people who are using it. We had to work inside the level 4 lab and use all of the special biosafety precautions. And that makes it very difficult to use. With coronaviruses, the problem is slightly different. There's a certain amount of evidence that coronaviruses, when you're infected, actually produce quite relatively poor and short-lived immune responses to infection, and you would normally expect the virus infection to produce, the best type of immunity. The other problem with coronavirus is that during the response to both the MERS outbreak in 2012 to 14 and in the SARS outbreak, we tried to make vaccines. And if the wrong type of antibodies are produced, then they can actually make disease worse. It's a phenomenon called antibody enhancement, and it's something that at all costs we have to try and avoid in the development of a vaccine to this virus.
That's comforting to know. I mean, but on the other hand, deeply worrying. Is it possible? There is no vaccine for any other coronavirus, I think, from SARS to the common cold. They don't exist. So is it possible that there might not be that it might not be possible to create a vaccine for COVID-19, that it's just a virus that's resistant to vaccination? Yes, it's possible. I mean, we hope not, but there's no reason to think that it would be easy. I mean, it would be absolutely awesome if we have a vaccine in September. It would actually be incredible. If we have a vaccine after 18 months, that would be an outstanding outcome as well. We do have to face the possibility that it could be 4 years or never. Until we start to do this, we're not going to know how humans respond to these vaccinations. And it's important to know that not only do they have to be safe, but they also have to induce neutralizing antibodies which will stop the virus from infecting cells. And a lot of the trials which are being used now are using technologies which are in their infancy, haven't been traditionally used to make a lot of vaccines in the past, maybe one or two, and so we don't know how well they'll work. If it's not possible to create a vaccine for COVID-19, where does that leave the world?
If you look at some of the projections which are out right now, there's a reasonably good chance, I think it's almost certain, that there will be another peak towards the fall. It's not clear how much the virus will disappear over the summer. Normally an influenza virus sort of drops right down. It isn't clear this virus will do that, but we would anticipate a peak. And if we have successive phases of increasing social distancing and economic restrictions and then releasing them, you would anticipate that there would be potentially a series of waves where more and more people gradually get infected from the virus, and we can hope that will lead to herd immunity without overwhelming the health system. But hope isn't an awesome strategy for dealing with an outbreak like this. So I think we do have to believe that we can make a vaccine. A lot of very clever people are working on it. Otherwise, we could be in this situation for at least 2 years, maybe more.
Still ahead, rate my Skype room.
Everybody just needs a little bit of laughter and levity these days.
The Canadian woman poking fun at interviews done from home. Plus,
it's tough to turn on a dime, but you have to. It's survival of the fittest.
The Canadian companies finding a new way to do business. And up next,
it is causing us already to question what we were doing.
What our schools might look like in the new reality. If you have school-aged children and you're working from home, you're learning all kinds of lessons about parenting in a pandemic. And you're probably wondering when normal school service will resume. Well, it's slowly happening. Quebec was the first province to announce primary schools and daycares will begin to reopen on May 11th, though attendance will not be mandatory.
we think that anyway in 6 months, there's no proof that we will have a vaccine in 6 months. So we'll be in the same situation as today.
But next door in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford says it's too soon.
We got to protect our children. The children can't protect themselves. They rely on us to make a decision. And no one wants to put our children in harm's way. And I'm just not willing to chance it.
The messaging is confusing. There are 5.6 million elementary and secondary school students in Canada. As Mike LeCouture explains, they and their parents are tired and bored and are left wondering, what is the right thing to do?
So I have a call at 1, but I don't need my computer for it.
Here's a contemporary twist on a classic math problem. Sarah Sims and David Hertel have 3 kids and 3 laptops between them, but 5 people who need a digital device to work at home. So, how do they get it all done?
Right after this, we've got online guitar lessons that are happening at the same time as a scheduled meeting with one of our kids' classes. So I actually don't know what we're going to do yet, but I think we will probably end up giving up one of our work computers for half an hour.
Some schools have been able to distribute laptops to students during the lockdown for their homework. Helpful, perhaps, but many parents are discovering they simply don't have the bandwidth to do their own job from home and be teachers, especially in certain subjects.
I have just flat out said no on helping with algebra or anything to do with measuring, parallelograms or anything.
That's a challenge for Matthew Dotzenroth as he tries to keep his students engaged.
I think there absolutely has to be an understanding that after March 13th, learning looked really different.
The English teacher is reaching out to students one-on-one because it's hard to know how they're doing when you can't read their body language in class on a daily basis. The lesson plans are being adjusted to fit this new reality, and while there are some limitations, there are also new opportunities. The National Film Board of Canada has opened its entire collection to teachers, while the Ripley's Aquarium in Toronto has added webcams to underwater exhibits, allowing students to visit online. And there are other examples of companies being more cooperative during this crisis.
I was talking with another English teacher colleague and said, I don't have a copy of this book, but I want to get it to students. And they emailed the publisher and said, do you mind if I make a digital copy available? I know there's copyright issues, and the publisher sent them a PDF copy by the end of the day and said, don't worry about it.
Bong, 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 bong. Oh, there's the bell.
Giving students some sense of normalcy in these abnormal times is the key. It's forcing educators to adjust.
Good morning, Columbia Park Elementary School.
Like this principal in Revelstoke, BC, who continues to read daily announcements over Twitter. He's added Friday physical distancing dance parties to his repertoire to spice things up. As education experts know, you've got to meet kids where they are, even if it's kilometers away in their homes.
Hey, good afternoon, class.
Now, the mountain biking class, yes, that's an actual thing in BC, is a little different online, with the teacher describing tricks and then doing them on camera. But imagine a shop class where the teacher is used to hovering over his students in an engine bay instead of now talking to them over the web.
We're working on small engines right now, and so we're ramping up a little bit, and we're certainly learning new relevant things.
Now, it's created opportunities for students to learn on their own time at home, but it still lacks that interaction with friends we all expect from school.
Like, you kind of take it for granted that you see everybody every day. So I've been missing that social aspect of school.
So what will school look like in the future? Well, a lot of people are looking to Denmark, which was the first European country to reopen schools, albeit under very different circumstances.
One class is, for example, separated into 3 different classrooms in order to adhere to the social distancing.
Quebec will follow that blueprint when schools there reopen May 11th. Each class will be limited to a maximum of 15 students, with lunch and recess times being staggered to avoid crowds. Attendance will be optional, but still, some parents are leery.
I'm not worried so much about her health. I'm more worried that if the kids are carriers, that they're going to get other people. So our family, our relatives, my father, her grandfather, I'm more concerned about that.
And that concern will remain until there is a vaccine. So is this the new reality of schooling, or is it time for a rethink?
It is causing us already to question what we were doing.
School Superintendent Mike Hooker says one of the silver linings in all of this is the realization that maybe a more flexible learning environment is actually better for students.
Why would you run right from the end of a school day straight into another set of study, as opposed to being able to leave the building or leave the virtual classroom, go get some exercise, have a nutritious snack, take a break, do some things with some friends, and then come back again, and now you're refreshed and ready for some more learning.
There's no question that it's important to return kids to schools because of those interpersonal interactions that shape us during our formative years. But it's possible a hybrid education system of both online and in-person learning will be the new reality, preparing students for a world where working from home is the norm.
For many people, working from home now is the new normal. What is not normal is what many businesses are going through. New data from Statistics Canada shows about 2/3 of Canadian businesses have been highly affected by lower demand for their products and services. About half say it's so bad they've been forced to cancel services they sell. Those who survive are those who adapt, those who manage to turn lemons into lemonade. Tonight, 3 companies share their stories of finding new ways to do business.
Hi, I'm Carrie Silber, the owner of Encore Catering. I've been in business since 1979. We've catered over 40,000 meals in my career to this point. The bulk of our business has been basically social and corporate catering, where we've done product launches, car launches, weddings, bar mitzvahs, christenings, those types of events. I could see the writing on the wall where events were starting to cancel as early as March the 10th. People were starting to cancel their events. Fortunately, I've got a couple of younger sons that work with me and decided to do a grocery home delivery prepared food service, which has taken off at the beginning of March, and it's been growing ever since.
2 Spanish onion and 3 corn. All right, knock it up, let's go.
They're preparing at home. They don't want to go out to the supermarket.
You need tomatoes, you said? My name is Ryan Silber, and I'm the director of Encore Catering. We're here for the community, and the community's really been there for us. And that's the most important part to take away from this. With contactless delivery, coming into the kitchen, wearing a mask, wiping down boxes, every piece that, we don't let delivery people into the building. They have to drop it on the loading dock. We have to check it. We don't sign paperwork. Hand sanitizer, washing.
I'm starting to integrate a lot of celery too into the product.
We do support a lot of frontline workers through our Donate a Meal program, and we hear the feedback and of what's actually happening in the hospitals, and it's scary. This isn't going away, and maybe it's going away for the short term, but it's not going away for the catering business for a while. And our business is changed for 6 months to a year for the foreseeable future. So we need to adapt, we need to pivot, and that's what we've done.
It's tough to turn on a dime, but you have to. It's survival of the fittest, and so you do what you have to do, and you just do it. And we've done it.
My name is Aziz Alam, co-owner at Good Neighbor. It's a mini department store, we call it. It's more than clothing. We do, or footwear, we do a lot of lifestyle, anything that relates to a young family and their kids. Pre-COVID, we were doing incredible. We're doing very well. We were very busy. We took on a big expansion plan for the store, a 2nd floor. We didn't know the severity of it until it hit us, and we right away figured out we have this little website that we had pre-COVID. It's a brick and mortar business. It was never going to be an online business, but online has exposed us in a different way now. It's all organic too. I mean, with all the government support that we got, thank God, we were able to hold on to some of our staff, and they were key in this thing. They all rallied around the business, and they helped us out personally to fill the store, the online store. The doors are closed, but really we're still open. I'm personally engaged with these people. I know them all very well, so I decided to take on the whole delivery of the local area for myself. I started knocking the door, leaving a box, running out of there with my mask on, and it turned out that everybody started coming out of their doors and saying hello to me, and that was amazing. It's a lifeline right now. Like I said, it's a drop in the bucket for what needs to happen. The most important thing that could have happened is because it is keeping us engaged with our actual consumer who shops here.
Good morning, guys. Going in 5, 4, 1, round 2.
My name is Shahid Kashvani. Nickname is Shady, childhood nickname. We've been open Ferris 360 for 7 years, and we have 12 staff. We do group fitness, we do personal training. Classes here are a little bit on the tougher side, but we look to cater to all levels. We would see anywhere between 350, 450 people a week. You can imagine March, it's a busy time for gyms. We're sort of live and things are happening, and all of a sudden COVID hits. We worked with all the protocols and then eventually shut things down. I thought, you know, we have to still feel like we're part of the community and have the community feel like they're still a part of us. People want to rent out equipment. So that went basically in 2 days, all of our equipment went.
You need to come straight down. Why? You have to row.
From there, we also included live classes, so Zoom classes. I sort of stepped up to the plate after feeling really down, but you know, something just clicked. I had a lot of good people around me that motivated me.
19, 20, squat, down, step, rotate.
Just the other day we had a class live, I think there was about 65 people, so it was awesome. We're in a position now where, you know, there's the community give back, the rent relief, you know, we couldn't be happier about that. It really puts us in a position to look forward. It's a whole new ball game almost every single week. So more than that, I'm just looking for the health of sort of everybody. It's a tough time for people out there, and you know, you just hope for the best for everybody and that we come out of this sooner than later.
Coming up next, a sign of the times.
You don't know why you're in the wrong place and you don't have the information.
How the COVID-19 crisis is making a silent world even quieter for the deaf community.
It's a case we'll never forget. Crime Beat. From the files of global news and the reporters who covered them. True stories behind some of Canada's most high-profile homicides. Crime Beat. Saturday at 7 on Global.
When we're in the middle of a crisis, we look even harder for people and sources of information we can trust. All those briefings by public health officers and political leaders are must-see TV for lots of Canadians who are trying to navigate this uncertain future. In Canada, they happen in English and French and in sign language. The sign language interpreters have become increasingly visible and popular in this crisis. Mike Drolet explores what a lifeline they are for the deaf community.
For every grim-faced politician with even more grim news, a silent partner stands to the side, a lifeline to the deaf community.
And especially in a time like this, when there is a crisis, who's the most vulnerable people is those people that don't have access to information.
And while the deaf live in silence, COVID-19 has made the world even quieter. With so many people wearing masks, it's near impossible to tell when someone is talking. Doing groceries with access rules changing daily can be confusing, if not terrifying.
And so you go in and it's kind of like a gamble, right? Do I go to the right? Do I line up here? There's, you know, if somebody says something to you because you've been in the wrong place, you don't know why you're in the wrong place and you don't have the information. They may be talking to you, but you're not hearing what they're asking you to do. So there is heightened anxiety.
That anxiety has been all but ignored amidst all the stories being done on interpreters. They've become a thing, with headlines lauding their personalities. You've likely heard of Nigel Howard in BC, who's become a celebrity with fan pages and posters. And a U.S. interpreter with an uncanny resemblance to David Letterman became clickbait.
Christopher, do you have a minute?
All this was before Ontario's Doug Ford gave interpreter Christopher Desloge a premier pat on the back.
My friend, you're a champion, you're a rock star.
Now, there's no question Ford was being sincere. But like most hearing-able people, he played into a stereotype the deaf community often complains about, that their language is entertainment.
Our top story tonight.
Our top story tonight.
The Alicia Francisco Franco is still dead.
Is still dead.
Interpreters are expressive by design. They wave their arms and make faces. It's part of their language.
For some people, affect is the tone of your voice, but for other people, affect is the words you choose.
And while Windsor interpreter Rebecca Stuckless grew up with two deaf parents, she still defers to interpreters who are deaf because American Sign Language, or ASL, is their first language.
Let's not kid ourselves. People are always looking for inspirational porn. You know, we go to the internet for that. We're always like, you know, where's the feel-good story? Oh, look, it brought tears to my eyes. We all need that. We need that positivity.
The deaf community needed the same thing as everyone else, information. The day after Ford's praise, viewers wondered what happened to his interpreters. Physical distancing rules meant they were moved to another room, and technical challenges mean they're available widely to the public only via the province's YouTube page. In Saskatchewan, they didn't even have an interpreter at all, leaving the deaf community to look elsewhere.
A friend of mine, she had to watch the Los Angeles news because they had the interpreter on the screen full time.
After a few complaints, the problem was rectified.
New infections are starting to level off.
There are more interpreters working now than there were a month ago, using a sign created specifically for this pandemic.
My understanding, the sign for COVID actually came from Chinese Sign Language.
But knowing how to sign COVID is one thing. Knowing you're getting all the life-saving information that comes with it is another entirely.
Coming up, from the good
seems like everybody wants to be in front of a bookshelf.
to the bad,
Sometimes the lighting isn't good.
the BC woman rating our rooms. Part of our new reality means we can't go to people's homes right now, but we sure are getting glimpses inside a lot of them. All the people working from home and appearing on Skype and Zoom are inadvertently giving us windows into their worlds, and it's not always flattering. A Twitter account called Rate My Skype Room is keeping track of them. It's fearlessly reviewing the staging behind everyone, journalists, celebrities, pundits, politicians. Here's one, Gwyneth Paltrow. Limited. Bar cart? Bad light. Try an enema. 3 out of 10. And here's Hillary Clinton. The room is bright and the decor is charming. The view through the window is lovely. 9 out of 10. And how about Justin Trudeau during this week's virtual parliament? Good mix of well-read books, photos, and objets d'art. A well-placed succulent would add color. 8 out of 10. Well, the woman behind all of this is Canadian Jessie Berry, who lives in Port Moody, BC, and Jessie joins me now. Jessie, so great to talk to you. Does it surprise you that some people who look so good on TV and in movies and studios really look kind of pretty ordinary or even worse at home on Skype?
I think that was actually part of the reason why this has been such a big hit, is because everybody can relate to people who have laundry, have a cat photo bomb, have kids run into the room, have, photos that aren't perfectly straight on the walls. And I think it makes it relatable. I think it makes it fun. And I think everybody just needs a little bit of laughter and levity these days.
What are the key components that you think make for a good backdrop for a Skype interview?
Well, the angle of the camera is really important because a lot of times you get too close or too far away and that wrecks the shot. Sometimes the lighting isn't good. I would say that the bright colors and plants add a lot to the room.
What does all this success, this appeal that you've had on Twitter tell you about how we're managing to connect with viewers and people who we otherwise, we don't really have a window into their world?
When we first started, I didn't realize how people were feeling isolated, and I think that every time you turn on the news, it's obviously all about the coronavirus, how it's changed lives, all the negative things. I think people really glommed onto this because it was something different, it was fun, it broke up the news cycle. I also think that people are just spending more time at home, whether they're working from home or the social isolation. And it gives people something to talk about.
Okay, so final question. How hard did you work on your own room there? It looks beautiful. Got a bit of greenery behind you. Got a mantelpiece and a photo.
Okay, I'm gonna have to tell the truth. I spent most of my weekend. I actually had quite a long weekend doing that, so I will admit that. And I have new appreciation for people because it's not as easy as it looks. Not at all.
Coming up. Canadian kids singing their hearts out.
There's so much information surrounding coronavirus out there now. We know you have questions. Email your questions at globalnews.ca. Tune in to Global National or go to globalnews.ca/coronavirus now to find the answers.
And that's our program this week. We leave you with some unvarnished, enthusiastic, and super cute kids singing their hearts out as part of the Canada Together initiative in support of frontline workers. Sing it, kids.
Strong and free. Oh, Canada, not good for me, but I'm far and wide. Oh, Canada, God keep alive. Dun and a tune of strong and free. This flies through the stand on guard. Oh, Canada. We can stand on guard for Nathan. We stand on guard for thee. Stand on guard for thee. Bless you.